right, what's going on, everybody? This is BKB podcast episode number 4. Today, I'm joined here with my good friend. He's a registered massage therapist, marathon runner, and he just traveled through Europe for the last 23 days. I would like to introduce you guys to Lucki Mundi. How are you doing, brother?
Good, man. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Cool,
First
man.
time.
Yeah, so I mean, we got a lot to go through. We got a lot of things to cover, but I just want to let's start from the beginning. Let's go with, where were you born? And how was life growing up over there?
Yeah, so basically, small town raised. I was born in Penticton, BC, and my dad's a farmer, so we moved down to the southern part of the Okanagan, so Osoyoos, and we started farming out there, and kind of grew up in just kind of that environment, right? It's just a small town living. Everyone kind of is this big community there, so everyone knows everyone. And yeah, I find like graduating high school there, it's like the ceiling was a little bit low. Like you couldn't, everyone was so comfortable in who they were or who they thought they were that you never really had to kind of go outwards or kind of really step out of your comfort zone. So that's where I took the leap to go to school away from home, and so from there led me to in Kelowna, and then yeah.
Okay, cool. So, when did you get into like the Surrey Delta Fleetwood area?
So that was in the fall time of 2016. So it's been what now,
It's about
seven,
6 years.
8 years. Yeah. So it's been a little while now. So that was the RMT program that brought me out here. So after finishing my bachelor's in Kelowna there,
Hmm.
I ended up coming out to New Westminster at the WCCMT program for massage therapy.
Cool,
And
cool.
so I kind of just took that on, and I didn't know what I was really getting into, honestly, when I was there, because my initial thought was physio or chiropractic at the time. And so I thought, oh, let me just use this as a stepping stone, kind of increase my hand skills, and just kind of get a feel for the field, and then go from there, just because I didn't know anybody in the field at the time.
Cool. Okay. So, for the listeners, I've been working with Lucky, I think now it's been maybe 5 years, or maybe longer than that, right?
Yeah, basically, like right after I got into school, like I was like a year afterwards, we can start using our hands, and even though we can't be registered, we can still kind of work under the table, I guess, basically.
When did you get over to Fit Nation? A shout out to Jazz and Ben from Fit Nation.
Yeah, definitely. Those guys are some stellar dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there, you know what? Um, I would say like I kind of met with Ben guys like right away, right when I came to Surrey, basically, like the first few months, and I knew about their gym from before, and after that, they always had this little space, and then they already had the table with Jazz being the kin and stuff.
Mhm.
So he was already doing some manual therapy stuff. So it kind of just it just kind of like slid right into place almost. It was just kind of it was comfortable, and then started working with those guys out there. And it was just to kind of build my skills and just see what I could do, right? Kind of get out of my comfort zone even more with that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because I remember I was going from RMT to RMT, physio to physio, trying to find proper therapy. And I think for the better part of like 12 to 13 years, I'd been going from place to place trying to look for a good one. The ones that were really, really good, you know how it is, like with your schedule now, you're usually booked through for the month. The really,
yeah,
really good ones are booked through for like months. And
yeah,
then like
yeah.
you could barely get an appointment in, right? And I remember the time that Jazz was getting to the point where he's like, I'm getting tired because all these big guys are coming in and I got to do so much manual therapy on these guys. My
Killing
hands are
their hands.
mangled, right?
Yeah,
So he's like, I need an RMT. And
right.
I remember every time he's on the table, he's using was it like that boomstick thing? Like,
Boomstick. Yeah.
right? And he's
Those
just like
little
digging in.
rod.
He's like, and I used to tell him like, yo, you should just hire somebody else to do like that stuff, and then you should keep going with your kin thing, right? And
Right.
eventually, then he's like, yeah, I got an RMT, man, and
Yeah, like it just kind of the pieces kind of fell into place almost, right?
yeah, and I
With
have to
that.
say, from all the RMTs that I've visited, you're the first one that I stuck it out with for like years, because normally I'd go to an RMT for about a
Oh,
year or so,
interesting. Yeah.
and then you notice that the quality of the therapy would start to like go down a little bit. It's almost
Oh,
like,
as the sessions went on,
yeah, they get
yeah,
familiar with you.
get
And then,
comfortable. You're like,
yeah,
oh, let me slack off a bit
yeah,
here.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. So then,
yeah,
or they would move, or their schedule would just get too full. So I think you
right.
were like the first one. Even as a student, I identified. I'm like, all right, man, this guy's he's good. Like you kind of you. I think it's the hunger to like learn and understand the
Yeah,
anatomy, be good at your craft. I think that's where you kind of excel versus some others where they get that career, like they get that job, and then they just stop. They're kind of like, okay, I
right,
got my
right.
job now. I kind of know what I need to do for my job. Whereas you're always kind of like, okay, where can I add another layer, right?
Yeah. Like I honestly always thought of things as like, I don't know, like school, like I mean, I did my schooling too, and so obviously I'm pro schooling, but it's like it only gives you so much information. It's just it's the basic foundation that they teach you. It's
Mm-hmm.
up to you after the schooling really is done. You really actually start learning more obviously in that real world, but then doing your own research. Like I
Yep.
think that's where you actually it shows that you have a real interest in something or passion to kind of dig deeper. And for me, I mean, I guess coming from a sports background too, I've always just been in the movement world, trying to see how I can make myself better with basketball, wherever now with running, right? But like at the time, it was just like it was more like I already have the passion for it, the human body movement, and now it's just this was just a avenue I could actually just explore and now monetize and make a living off of, right? So but it grew from me wanting that kind of I guess that initial kind of kind of this instinct to want to know more,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there just it ended up channeling through the RMT world, and I never would have guessed it would have been that, right? But here
Mm-hmm.
we are.
So what would you say was like the deciding factor for you to decide to go into like, all right, I'm gonna just hop in and do this thing in terms of massage therapy?
You know what? Like it was kind of it was kind of like a leap though, like kind of leap of faith because I didn't know anybody in this field at all before prior to myself. I've known even like physio and chiro, you know the people that you've gone to, but I didn't know anybody personally either through that. So it's more of like okay, I have this love for science, the body. I think my hands are pretty strong from just growing up in a freaking farm, right? Just you're using your physical, you're using your body. And
Mm-hmm.
I never shied away from stuff like that because even in high school, me and a couple of my friends, we actually were wildland firefighters. So
Mm-hmm.
we are already in the mountains doing like the trench work, literally. So I'm like, what other job can really be that taxing after you've kind of already like experienced those situations, right? So I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, and I thought of it as just like a stepping stone, but once I went to schooling, got to actually working, and like found like, man, there's so much autonomy with this field. You have the free will to do whatever you want, right? You don't have a boss. You can run your own business, and it's like I just saw a lot of opportunity within that, and then I just kind of just jumped in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely flexibility there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, yeah,
that's a bonus.
that's where I mean, where my trip comes into play, right? Traveling for
Yeah,
almost
we're
a
gonna get to
month.
that. We're gonna get to that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So I guess for me, a lot of the time when I recommend massage therapy or regular massage therapy, especially to athletes, but even regular people, right? For the people that have coverage, it's great. But
It's
what
a
tips would you
privilege.
give
Yeah.
to some people if they're dealing with an injury? Maybe they can't afford to get like regular massage therapy, maybe once a month versus every week. Like, what are maybe like one good tip for them to help with their injury in terms of recovery? Like, for example, if they see you once a month, what's others? What's one other very important variable that they can add in to help with their recovery?
Would you say in terms of like what they can actively do in terms of like their own stretching routine, or
Yeah,
would you
so like
say like a lifestyle change?
let's say I can only see you once a month
Okay.
and I got a really bad back injury, right?
Right.
And but I can only afford to come in one time.
Right. Right.
What tip would you give? Because I know I talk to physio cans and RMTs like yourself, and you guys will prescribe something on top of the therapy,
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, a lot of those people are not going to do
Not
that
doing
extra
no.
stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Passive
like to
therapy is
hammer home the
always,
point of like how important that is.
yeah,
So I thought maybe, you
right.
could give your top tip on, okay, if you're going to see me once a month, that's not going to be enough to heal this injury, or it's going to take really long. So, maybe what's a top tip for people that might not be able to afford it, but they can help with their recovery from an injury, like
Yeah.
let's say a back injury.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Honestly, I would say the biggest one, like for me, even when someone comes in, and I know they can't come in often, is I just try to educate them as much as I can with either tools that they can use themselves, like actual physical tools, but then even just the internet.
Mhm.
Like YouTube is great for it. Like the same things we're doing, there's someone making a video on YouTube and posting about it. And so you just have to put in like back like best back stretch for with like a lower back strain or something like that, right? Like there's so many tools you can turn to, and that's where I would say once you have that, now it's like the ball's in your court. Now it's up to you to kind of go through the motions and actually do the exercises, the stretches, or it might just be you got to make a lifestyle change. Like
Mm.
you gotta if you're a desk job worker, you gotta make sure you don't sit. You have breaks in between, or you change your chair, right? You get a better chair. There's
Ergonomic
little
chair, yeah.
things, yeah, exactly. It's these like small changes that you make to your daily life that I find can have the biggest impact, because if you do it consistently enough, now it's changing your life. It's just changing the direction of it, really. So
Well,
it's usually lifestyle that causes a lot of injuries
mhm.
to begin with. They're just slow building, and then you one day you wake up and you move a certain way and you pull something, you're like, I don't know what I did. Well, it's never just one thing, right? So
Mhm.
that's why those lifestyle changes, I would say, are the long-term solution. Like the small, like the tools to use here, even the therapy,
Mhm.
it's all short-term kind of relief, right? And I always try to hammer that home. It's not really good for business all the time saying, don't come to me often, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to be honest with everyone, right? So it's like, hey, you can come see me as much as you want, but if you really want to get to the root cause and really find a solution, it's you're gonna have to kind of look inward more, I would say.
What are your thoughts on things like SMR or like theraguns and things like that?
Like same thing, like small, it's just short-term relief, and by all means use them if you can. Like every little thing can make a difference, but just know that's not you can use that for hours, and your issue might be good for a day or two, will come back, right? So like I would say if you can afford it, definitely. And on Amazon, I'm sure there's all these different models now you can buy for very cheap. So
Yeah,
I'd say
knockoffs, cheap knockoffs. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, they're a good thing too. Let's say you're watching TV, right? You just using the gun, and something easy to do, but
Do you
don't
think
get
there's a
buried
point
in
of
it.
like overuse for that stuff?
For the most part, that stuff's pretty safe to use, so you can't really overuse it. But I would say, in the sense of the nervous system, you could definitely get it to kind of react in a negative way now, right? Because our nervous system can only take on so much stress before it starts thinking things are hurting it now, right? So
Mhm.
even therapy, there's only so much pressure you can use before it's past its kind of limit of therapeutic effect, right?
Fair
Now
enough.
you're really hurting, you can be hurting someone. So the good thing about those things are they're very low intensity. They're not really going down to deeper structures like that. So I don't think anybody can really hurt themselves with it, but
Yeah.
just be cautious.
Yeah, because I've heard some stories from some clients, man. They're like, "Oh, I was using it on my quad for an hour." I'm like, "An hour?" And
Yeah, you gotta just
they're
have
using all the
some,
different nozzles
yeah,
in the front, from the thin
yeah,
needling one to the more bigger dull one. And I'm like, I think
right,
an hour is a lot. I think you could do more
yeah,
damage than good, especially
yeah.
because I think people don't understand how the muscle tissue runs. They're almost like going against the grain versus like going with
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, totally. And it causes them more discomfort. And they think sometimes
it's helping
pain
them.
is good,
Yeah.
right? But there's a fine line with that too, right? It's like pain is good as long as you're able to, usually like things like if you're able to breathe through it, right? Like if you're able to actually take a deep full breath in and out. If you have to hold your breath, that's a form of it's a defense mechanism. Your body's clenching itself, protecting itself. So it's whenever you find yourself even using like those lacrosse balls or a foam roller,
Mhm.
if you're going to the point of like you're holding your breath and you're thinking, oh, I got to really release this tissue, it's kind of a tug and war now. Like it's getting pulled the other way now because your nervous system is actually on in kind of defend mode, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
you
I
have to be
just
careful with
the
that.
lacrosse ball stuff, the foam rolling SMR. I just use that before the gym just to prime my body. It always feels good. Like 10,
Yeah,
15
yeah.
minutes.
And you know what? Sometimes it's just for the mental, right? Let's
Yeah,
say you just had a really long day and it's a form of tension release and tension can build up mentally or physically, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
I think yeah, it can definitely play a good role in people's kind of routine.
Hmm. Okay. So have you had the opportunity to work with any high profile athletes?
Oh, you know what? It was just not until recently, actually. I forgot what this was now. This was in actually June. One of my clients, he's actually what was it? The director of the Harry Jerome International Track Meet. So
Okay.
that's the outside races and javelin throw and high jump and long jump that happens just in Burnaby there, Swangard Stadium, I want to
Oh
say.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. And so since he's running it, he needed RMTs to be present day before, day of as well too, and stuff like that. And so I got opportunity to work with some of the Olympians that are
No way.
the track stars. Funny enough, what was Damien Warner was there, the Canadian gold
Yeah,
medalist
yeah, yeah.
for the decathlon. So
Mhm.
it's amazing seeing him. I didn't get to treat him though, but I worked on some of the what was it? Some of the American javelin throwers. So some of the Olympians
Oh,
there. Um, a few runners from one was from Jamaica. She was a 100 meter runner.
okay.
Yeah. So worked on them. Who else was there? A couple of like high jump athletes as well too.
Mhm.
But like yes, some were collegiate and just a few were Olympians. But that's like the only chance I really got to work with
Dude, that's no
some
joke though. Olympians are that's as almost cream of the crop. Basically, the best you can get is
yeah.
like the people actually winning all the medals. So that's up there, man.
Yeah, totally. It was definitely a very I was very grateful for that opportunity because it was incredible. Like man, their bodies are just in like top condition. But
Are
even
they like
that
are
being
they
said,
mangled or are they
they're
like
they've got injuries. They've got injuries. See,
okay?
that's just it. You gotta everything comes at a cost, right? Even being the best, your body's on the line, right? So some of these guys, yeah, you see like the surgery scars, right? They're still healing from their sprained shoulders or ankles. It's incredible. But I
Yeah, that
think for them, I think mentally they're just on a different level though.
yeah.
And I think
Because
that's what separates them.
yeah, for sure, man. Because people think like these guys are invincible. They got these genetics where they never get injured, or like any
No.
sport. Take any sport. You could take bodybuilding. Oh, these guys are genetically gifted, and this, that, or the other,
Right.
and they never get injured. Or MMA fighters, like they very rarely get injured.
Right.
Dude, a lot of them are mangled because they're pushing the limits of the body, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
totally.
crazy though.
Yeah, it is for
So
sure. So
that's a good segue. So for the audience, you're also a marathon runner. You ran your first marathon not too long ago. So
yeah.
how did you get into running? And what was kind of the allure of it?
Oh, you know what, man? To begin with, like it was during the times of COVID, and I think this story is pretty similar with a few people that have started in whatever hobbies or interests during the time of COVID, right? It's like, well, you gotta pivot, and so which way do you go? Because for us in the kind of working out world, it's like, well, the gyms are closed,
Mhm.
so our primary form of getting movement in is now gone, right? And yeah, you can do home gyms and stuff like that, and I did do a little bit of that, but I was like, well, I mean, what else can I do? Like, what can I try different that I always kind of neglected or like made a million excuses for, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't run because it's bad for your knees, or it's gonna you lose all your gains. Like that's a
Yeah.
big one. That's a
Yeah.
big myth that you hear right around the bodybuilding world too.
Mhm.
But that was one of the main reasons was just to like, okay, let me just try something different. I've always been against it. Even when I see someone run, I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, what's the reason? Like, do stairs or do some biking. Like, why do you need to run? It destroys your joints. But then I started running, and then I'm like, the first few times, like, okay, I would just kill myself. Like, I think I need to run as fast as I can for as long as I can, and try to just increase the kind of like the volume or in my mind, I thought it was like this is how I get faster and run longer, but it's literally the opposite of what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
But so that was going back. That was the main reason of starting was just like, okay, how do I stay healthy and fit, right? And keep the movement going. And running just seemed like a natural thing to do at the time when you can only be by yourself and you got to be outside. You don't have to wear a mask. So
Yeah. Yeah.
got into that. And then yeah, I slowly as the months went on, I kept running, kept running. I'm not too sure why I kept on it. I think it like for me, it ended up turning to going from a physical therapy to like mental therapy almost.
The runner's high is a real thing, man.
Yeah, 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 totally. So and it's something that I never really considered too. And it just kind of, I end up kind of just falling into that. And that's what kind of really kept me running and until this day. And it's nice, like going on the marathon, and I've done a couple like half marathons, 10Ks, and it's like, those things are nice because they're low targets to shoot for. It keeps things fun, right? You have something to kind of work towards, and even that though, I found it's always like the weekly sessions that I was engaged with. Like the marathon's going to come and go, the races are going to come and go, and they're only a few hours.
Yeah.
And training it compromises of this like whole kind of like you're dedicating like a third of your life to this almost basically, right? So at least your time in the day,
Mhm.
and so it's like that's what makes up running. It's not the medal you get or just bragging about the marathons you've done, right? It's that journey or those reps you put in. So
Mhm. Mhm.
for me, that's what's kept me consistent with it, I would say.
Cool. Cool. So when did you run your first marathon?
So that was just this um uh when was that actually? I'm forgetting the date now. It was May 1st. That was the date. Yeah.
That's
May
right. That's
1st.
right.
Yeah,
So
just
you know how
before summer started.
you were talking about losing all your gains from running? We
Yeah.
worked together during that period for that
Yeah.
marathon, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were shredded. The
Yeah.
check-in after the marathon, you were, I think you were even like in better condition from a muscular perspective than when we first started. Like you were just
I would agree.
peeled, right? I remember one of the check-ins, I was like, dude, the heck's going on here? You're supposed to be stringy and stuff, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's where people get that misconception.
Yeah.
You're trained like because you also your training is also different. It's not like the average person where they just run all day. You're still doing strength training a few times a
Yeah.
week and mobility
Exactly.
work, right? So I mean, I can attest to the fact that that wasn't the case with you. You actually got in better shape and you're doing more running. So how was the experience with the marathon and how was the training and the prep work different than when you were doing the smaller, 10K runs?
Oh man, it's just at that point it's just volume
Mhm.
because to prepare for the marathon, like going back to what I was saying that my initial thought of running was like you run every other day you run it's got to be faster than the last and you got to run longer, and I thought that's how you improve in running. It's literally the opposite. So training for the marathon, it's 42 kilometers and you're running consistently for the whole time. So it's like, well, how do you improve at that? Well, there's two ways. One way is you do conversational pace running. So basically you're able to breathe um, fully without having to huff and puff, and you're running. But essentially, it's like a fast jog, I like to call it. And uh, and at that point, you do that for a longer period, over and over, you're not exhausting your muscles. You're not putting your body at the brink of injury. So that's where it's really good in that perspective is you can run injury or like injury free and have no risk of it. Um, and what that requires is just time. Like
Mm.
you do that 3 times a week. You run for you got to do longer sessions as well too, but you usually have once a week a long run, and you do that can comprise of 20 to 30 kilometers, 35 kilometers in one run, but you run it at a very slow pace. Like I'm talking a minute and a half slower than what you would run at your marathon pace.
Oh, wow, okay.
So let's say my marathon pace was like 4:30. So I was running at a 5:20, 5:30 per minute kilometer pace.
Mhm.
So for me, I feel like what I'm like in my mind, I'm like, this is so slow, but that's what you have to do. Like that's just like the groundwork you have to put in. And so that'd be the most bulk of the sessions, like 80% of, let's say I'm doing 70 kilometers a week,
Mhm.
80% of that 70 is done at that pace. So now if you break it down, I'm not really putting my body through a lot in terms of physical demand. Like, of course, it's a lot of kilometers, but your body is slowly adjusting to it.
Yeah,
So
and
your body's just getting
your
adapted.
intensity is not that high either, right? You're not doing marathon pace for that long.
Exactly. So you're not going at this like full RPM and like really exhausting your body, right? But that's where recovery and sleep is so important, right?
Hmm.
And we can talk about that later too. But basically that's what it came down to. And then you sprinkle in track sessions or marathon pace sessions. And
Hmm.
the closer it gets, you kind of increase those a little bit more and more. You would just spend more time in marathon pace than the conversational pace,
Hmm.
but you would still keep the ball conversational. That's what marathon training, it's not how young you are. It's how many years of experience of running do you have. I find that's gonna make you the better marathon runner.
Hmm.
So
So
that's where
closer.
it's different.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
So closer to the race, you were increasing your marathon pace, like the amount of time that you would do marathon pace. So you're
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
periodizing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then at the same time, it's like 2 weeks to a week out, you're going less and less kilometers
Fair
in
enough.
terms of volume anyways. You're getting your body ready for the race and not kind of putting it through all those kilometers anymore. But yeah, you're increasing intensity with that a little bit. So just so your body's ready for it too.
In essence,
And
it's like load management almost, right? If you're going to
yeah,
increase the intensity, you got to take the overall volume down, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. And so
What
then
about you mentioned recovery a little bit. So what did
yeah,
you do in terms of your recovery? Because you get a lot of those people that are like, I only sleep 3 4 hours, man. That's all I need. I feel fresh the next
yeah,
day,
yeah.
and
And they and they
then
and they
they get
think it's
injuries.
yeah, they get injuries. Yeah. See, that's where like sleep's the biggest one. Like I think we've talked about sleep so much, and I've had to kind of improve my sleep with like a weighted blanket and a cooler room and whatnot. But sleep is the biggest one. Like they do say, like you're only supposed to get 8 hours in a regular day, but if you're training for some endurance kind of event or something like that, they say for every hour of training, you got to sleep an hour more.
Oh,
Like it's
wow.
just gonna, it's a general rule, like of course. So it's like, okay, you have 2 hours of training in. Well, now on top of that 8 hours, you need two more,
Hmm.
right? Or you try to aim towards that at least. So they're basically just saying get more than what you normally try to get anyways.
Hmm.
And the more is only going to improve it, right? So and then that included with nutrition, that's the next biggest one. It's like right under it. If you're not eating enough quality whole foods, like you can kind of forget it. Like you're putting your body at a disadvantage, and you might even like cramp up, and you might not even actually improve your, if you've been running for a while, you might not even improve your time.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
So
man. So I think it's stuff that you're repeating that a lot of people have talked about, where it's sleep,
yeah,
nutrition, stuff like that.
yeah,
I think it's just eventually it'll hit home for people that it's like, oh, it is actually that important. I remember, I think when we were working together, you were saying that your body heats up and then you wake up.
yeah.
So you started to cool the room a little bit. You started using the weighted blankets. You actually had a procedure that you were kind of following so you could fall asleep better. I think within a little bit of making those changes for yourself, you were sleeping better. You went from
Oh
like
yeah.
6, 7 hours to your full 8 hours, and you're feeling a lot better, more
Yeah,
recuperated.
yeah. Closer to nine, even some weeks. So it was, yeah, it was really good actually. And that only made the training, I would say, a lot more enjoyable because your body's just ready to go the next day.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's primed and ready, right?
yeah,
Cool, cool.
totally.
So I would say, before we wrap up that segment, what are some tips that you have to give to people that are new to running, and maybe they kind of want to follow in the same steps as you? Maybe they want to do the sun run or something like that, and
Right.
then maybe they caught the bug. You have a little bit more experience now. You're still relatively new. You haven't been
Yeah,
doing it for a
definitely
decade,
something. Yeah.
but it's still fresh in your mind. Because I talked to some guys that have been running for like 15 years, and they talk about what they're doing right now. And I'm like, hey man, you've been doing this for a very long time. What about for the beginner guy? Like, how about some tips for them? So, what
Right.
about some tips for a beginner, somebody that's starting to get into running? They're considering hopping into a 10K run. Maybe like 3 or 4 quick little tips that you're like, okay, this would be really helpful.
Yeah, I would say the first one is give yourself enough time to prepare for it too, or like so it's like jumping into races or something like that last minute when you have no like prior training or done something like that in the past. You're really gonna give yourself a bad experience, and you might not do it ever again, thinking that's what running is.
Mm.
So just give yourself the chance to actually um, have like a good experience with it. So that being said, just kind of prepare for it a little bit more. So for a 10K, um, at least you want to start like 2 months or so before, but like just start running at a slow pace, something that you can still breathe and just try running for 10 minutes, like 5 minutes. Don't even think about how fast you're running. Just try to run without having to stop. So that might just look like a jog then, right? So I would start with something like that, just starting light, not worried about speed. Like speed, that's something that you can worry about after you've had a couple races under your belt, right? So just worry about running without stopping. That's the biggest one. So whatever speed you have to run at where you don't have to stop, that's gonna help you improve slowly. It might not feel like it, but and the more you're doing it, the more they get the reps in, that's gonna it's gonna pay dividends down the road. So I would say that's the first one. And the second one would be I would say definitely see if you have had any prior injuries and see a therapist first to see if you got any issues with the hips, knees, and ankles, and then you can actually start running pain free because that's the next big thing. People don't run because it causes pain. So compensations or past injuries can make you rotate it or twist it a certain way. So it's gonna you're maybe not even fit to run right now. Like you might just have to slowly build up to that. So it's like knowing you're in the right condition to be able to run because you're running on one foot. So that's about 5 to 6 times your body weight on one leg. And so that's going to cause a lot of pain if there's already prior issues. And then another one would be to like yeah find a reason to why you're doing it. Like if you're just doing it, I mean, just for general fitness is good, but then I find people's motivation tends to decline after a few weeks of doing something. So try to find like a deeper why to why you want to run, right? And I find attaching it to something more in within yourself is always gonna you're gonna do it for a longer period of time, maybe more consistent with it. It's gonna make you happy.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
when you started, did you also do a jazz and bend too? Like you guys did it around the same time, or did you start first, or how
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that?
You know what? Yeah, Jazz has been running for a little while before that as well. I think he's done a couple races in the previous years. But yeah, those guys started running first,
Okay,
and
so that's another
that's
thing, man. The accountability side of things too. If you
yeah,
have running friends to run with,
yeah.
that's a huge
And
strength.
and just to have a conversation with, right? Like it's like every time I go to Fit Nation to have a training session, we're always talking like, oh, how are the kilometers looking? How's the body feeling? Right? It's like all these things kind of do help, right? And I think yeah, it's important to have people in your corner that are maybe doing a similar type of thing or someone you can just kind of have conversation with about, right? So
Yeah, I harp on that a lot, man, with my clients, where it's like,
yeah,
some people, it's funny, like they have maybe more knowledge than I do when it comes to specific aspects, but they're
yeah,
like, I look up to you. from a different aspect, but the accountability factor is like the most important part. Like if we look at when I coached you, it wasn't like anything fancy. I would say like 80-90% of the stuff you already knew. I
Right,
was just
right.
reiterating it. Maybe
Yeah,
10% was new information. And then it's just like, okay, let me send a check in to him. Okay, everything looks good. Let's keep on our way.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah.
people like that only need that little bit of accountability and it keeps them on track. So I think you having Ben guys there too, um, it was like helpful for you to just keep the ball rolling, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like how they in bowling. Do you know how they put those things in the gutters so that the ball won't go in the gutter and you might and you don't fall off track?
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like that, right? So you need people in your life that are kind of like that, right? You sway too much one way, they got you, and
That's a cool analogy,
like
man.
that.
That's a
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
analogy. I like that. So let's
yeah,
move on to the juicy stuff now. So you just got back from traveling. You traveled 23 days, but you were gone 25 days.
yeah, yeah.
You did a whole backpacking trip to Europe and a lot of different places. So like, how was that? How was the experience? Maybe just like we'll dig a little deeper, but just how was it?
Oh man, like that's just it. Like I would say it was probably it's been the best experience I've had in my life to this point in terms of and just amount of time too. Like I feel like yeah, we learn and grow as we as years go on, but like this was like a lot of growth, I would say, in a matter of less than a month. And the biggest thing I could highlight from is because I'm sure people have been to Europe, they've seen pictures of it, what it looks like. But for me, it was the people of Europe that I met.
Mhm.
And going alone and traveling alone, that was the biggest kind of experience I had was like, well, I gotta put myself out there. I gotta meet people, right? And that was like any opportunity I got. So for me, I think that's what made the experience so rich was just the people I met there.
Mm.
Like, but it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, so you were really backpacking, right? Because you were staying at hostels and stuff and figuring out your own transportation and kind of finding out how to get to each place. But like, which places did you travel to? Let's go down that route too. Like, where
Yeah.
along Europe did you travel?
So I basically started off in the Netherlands in Amsterdam, and that was just the cheapest place to fly into Europe, coming from Vancouver. And so my ticket was round trip from there. So I'll end up back there as well too. So that kind of played a part in what places I want to visit, just to kind of make it more kind of efficient with traveling and time.
Okay.
So I basically started off in Amsterdam and spent 2 days there, and then I flew to Barcelona into Spain. And so that's a little bit more southern, but I wanted to get that in because a lot of people told me about Barcelona being their favorite place, and the weather was supposed to be amazing. And so I went in September as well. So the tourism is supposed to be a little bit less. The weather's supposed to still be great. So I'm like, perfect. So that was my second stop in Barcelona. And then from there, I took a flight to Budapest into Hungary. And so that started off my, I guess this trip ended up being an Eastern Europe trip, basically.
Okay.
And without kind of the intention of that in the beginning, that's just kind of what it ended up being after talking to people and seeing what did I really want to visit. So from Budapest, took a train to Prague in the Czech Republic. And then from there, I took a train to Germany in Munich. And the stop for Munich was initially I wasn't gonna make a stop there. I was gonna go straight to Berlin, but I made a stop there because I had some family that told me go to Oktoberfest.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't realize Oktoberfest happens in September, but it kind of ushers in October. So I'm like, okay, this is perfect. So then I made a detour to Munich, and then I took a train from Munich to Berlin, and then from Berlin I took a flight to Poland, Krakow.
Okay.
So
So it sounds like it wasn't like fully mapped out. You're kind of like going with the flow a little bit.
yeah, yeah, totally. Like I even threw in Krakow, Poland at the end, like just before I left for my trip. So,
That's
and
crazy.
that the reason for that trip was literally that the ticket was 30 euros, and I'm like, I guess I'm going to Krakow, Poland, right? Because it's cheap. So, I did have one person tell me that Krakow, Poland was like a hidden gem of Europe.
Okay.
and it's a city that no, it's not mainstream, but it's very similar to I would say Prague, and
Okay.
it
Cool.
was it was one of my favorites as well too, Krakow. But yeah, like it wasn't really planned out completely until kind of like I was talking to people, and I literally went based on people's recommendations for the most part. I didn't do much research, I'll be honest. I'm like, okay, I want to go to here, I want to go to here. I just kind of like got a list of the places that people mentioned. I'm like, okay, what looks the smartest or most efficient route to take here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
That's
that's why
great.
those places. I know because it seemed random to go to Barcelona and that way upwards, right? Because people usually do like the coastal stuff together,
Okay.
like Italy, Greece, the south of France, and all that, right, together, and then with Spain. So, but I kind of just went with people's recommendations, and it didn't disappoint.
Cool. Cool. So we did talk a little bit off air about this before, like
Yeah,
prior, but what would you say you learned about yourself during this trip? Because I know initially you were supposed to go with somebody, but unfortunately the other person couldn't go. So it ended up being a solo trip. And
right.
most people when that happens, I would think would be like, all right, I'm just going to cancel it altogether then because I don't want to do this by myself. You said, let's
Yeah,
do it, right?
yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
like what did you learn about yourself during this trip? Because man, I lived in San Diego. I didn't even travel to Europe and all the different destinations, but I just lived there by myself for a period of time. And I learned a lot about myself when you have to do everything yourself, especially coming from Indian families, man.
Oh man, yeah.
Like moms like baby their kids and stuff
Shelter,
like
dude.
that.
It's just shelter.
So
They're
like
just
to go
protecting
to a
from the
place
world.
and then you got to deal with everything on your own. You got to figure out everything. If something goes wrong, it's all on you type of
Yeah.
situation. So like, what did you learn about yourself during this whole trip?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question because like I would like the easy one to go with is like you learn your independence and how to kind of move around in the world on your own. But like honestly, like I've already been pretty fortunate, I would say, to have that experience after high school.
Hmm.
Like I did live with my siblings for the first little while, but then afterwards I moved on my own as well too. And so I already got a taste of that living alone, having to do your own laundry, cook your own meals,
Hmm.
figure out like all like the day-to-day stuff that sometimes if you're living in a household that the parents take care of all that stuff, right? You don't have to bat an eye.
Hmm.
So for most people, maybe that would be what they would learn. And so, like for me, I guess it just kind of reinforced that like independence. Like, oh, it's really on you. Like, if you don't want to get up today, okay, you're not gonna have any food. You like, what are you gonna do today? Like, are you gonna go sightsee? Like, do you have a schedule in place, right? Whereas if you're going with friends or family, there's always someone to turn to on your left or right, saying like, okay, well, what should we do now? What should we do now? So for me, it was definitely like a little tough in that position because I've never been in that place before of being in a foreign country on my own, having to kind of navigate and really find a way to kind of do the things I want to do, right? And especially everything being written in foreign language too, right? But nowadays, though, I'll be honest though, the smartphones make everything so easy though. Like
Yeah.
so there's a lot of credit that's given to that because it's like literally like there's an app called like Google Translate has an app where you can take a picture of anything, and if it's in a different language, it will translate to English
Oh,
right
that's
there.
crazy. I didn't
So
know that.
yeah. So like all these buildings I went to that had all this different language carved into it, I took a picture of it, and underneath each sentence, it would just have the English
What's the
translation
name
to
of
it.
the app?
It's just Google Translate
Yeah.
because like you can go on Google Translate
So,
on
so Google Translate now lets you take a picture of that. Like,
yes, but you have to
cool.
get the app for it. Like, because
Okay.
you can do that on you can just go to Google on your phone, right, or
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
laptop. But you need to download the app and then take a picture through the app.
So what's the name of the app though? Do you know? Is it
Just
like a
Google Translate, I believe,
okay, okay,
it
cool,
was
cool,
called.
cool.
Yeah,
Just
they
in
just
case
named it
somebody
that.
else is gonna travel soon and they're like, oh, this would be helpful.
Yeah, super helpful. And I got taught that by another solo traveler. So like
Cool, cool.
that goes on to my next thing I learned about myself is like you can depend on other people, like strangers, like complete strangers.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we think the world is so harsh and cold, and maybe in some parts it is, and
Hmm.
maybe that's what the media just feeds us all the time, right? Like oh, your next door neighbors is the worst person, right? Whatever it is. But I honestly like at first I initially felt like that too, but then I just like, you know what, I'm lost. I need to ask where I'm going. I just asked a complete stranger. And they would wait 5 minutes, help me completely out, and show me which direction to go, and I'll never see them again.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And like so I would say like that was another like it opened my eye to like the world's not that bad. Like there's I would say most people are nice, man. You just gotta you gotta be less judgmental. And I think that was another thing too. I learned to be more acceptive and not judge a book by its cover. And so it's easier said than done, right? When you're in these different places because your guard's up, right?
Yeah.
Especially being alone,
Mhm.
you're like, okay, well, how safe am I here, right? You've heard the stories. You never hear really the million good stories people have in foreign countries. They tell you about the time they got pickpocketed or they got robbed or mugged,
Yeah.
because those stories travel quicker, right, than the good stories usually. So I think yeah, for me, it really shot down that perception of like the world's cruel, right? Like it's not that bad, man. Everyone's if you're willing to ask someone, they'll help you out. And so that was another one I learned too.
So you I know you mentioned to me off air. You were saying you exchanged a lot of contacts with some of the people that you actually had a meal with and conversed with. So
Kind of connected with,
roughly
yeah.
how many people throughout
Oh
this
man,
trip did you like a ballpark? How many people do you
yeah,
think you got like their information, like their Instagram handle or something, and you
right.
got in contact with?
Yeah, yeah. Like this was crazy to me when I counted up like the people. Like when I was on my flight back home, there was close like around 70 people.
Yeah, that's crazy, huh?
That like, and for me, I'm like, that's just insane. In a matter of less than a month, I connected with, and like, these are not the people I just passed by or kind of rubbed shoulders with. Like, I either had a meal with them or we went out on the night, um, went to a show, sights on during the day, or just we're hanging around the hostel because the hostels usually have this common lounge area.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
even some of them have bars and stuff like that. So they're really making an environment to connect with people. And so yeah, like around 70 people, man. Like, that's so many people that if I was to message them and I was in their country, we would definitely hang out again.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And that's
Yeah.
like that's the benefit. I think if I traveled alone, I would almost have to rely on communicating with other people because, normally we just kind of, okay, what do you think we should do? And then if the other person's kind of like, no,
It's
no, no, that
comfort.
guy, they
Yeah.
have their own view, right? They might be like, ah,
Yeah.
don't talk to that guy. That guy seems kind of sketchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Based
you
off
might talk
what?
to them and they
Yeah.
might end up being like the most helpful person to you, right?
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
That's crazy, man. So I guess at this stage, I mean, first of all, you're 27.
Yeah. I just turned 27.
So that's one of the things too, because some people are like, "Oh, I'm older, I have kids, I can't do these trips." But I think it's important to get out. I mean, what piece of advice would you give to somebody that's always been wanting to do a trip or travel? Because I've noticed that a lot of people do have a travel bug, but
Right.
it's just they don't pull the trigger. They're like, "Ah,
It's like
I can't do
self
this," or
limitations. Yeah.
like you could have easily been like, "I'm not gonna do it now." I don't want to do it by myself. I was supposed to go with somebody. So what piece of advice would you give? Because it looks like it was a life-changing experience for you.
Yeah.
So what piece of advice would you give to somebody that's kind of on the ropes, not too sure if they should go
Yeah.
do a trip, or not, or not? Like, what piece of advice could you give to that person?
You know what? Like I would say first maybe even begin with because you don't have to jump off the deep end kind of like the way I did it because I think mine was just the situation I was in and it was meant to play out the way it did and I've thought about solo traveling in the past so it was just for me I think it was just the shove I needed but for someone that's on the fence like that I would say definitely maybe just go with one other person or two start there and then in a couple of years you know what I feel more comfortable to go with just one person now and
Mm-hmm.
then after going with one person, you know what? I think I can go alone. And then maybe do a local trip alone. Maybe if you're here in Vancouver, maybe just go to the States. Just do a weekend trip somewhere alone. Like you don't have to bite off more than you can chew. Just start somewhere. And I think for everyone, and for the most part, I think it is just getting comfortable with it because it is uncomfortable, but it's meant to be. Like, when has anything good ever come from a position of a lot of comfort?
Yeah.
Whenever we had to work for something or put ourselves out there or be a little bit anxious, be a little bit nervous, that's usually when we grow the most, right? So um, I think don't shy away from it. Like just kind of the obstacle is the way for the most part, right? And I think that's what it kind of comes down to. But just start off slow. Just it's the same thing as running. You're not gonna like jump into a full marathon right away. So okay, sign up for a 5K and then a 10K and then a half and then do a full. So it's like same thing here. If you don't like yeah, for me, this is the first time in Europe. So I was kind of taking on this big thing, but for me it was the right opportunity, the right timing, and or you know what? It's also mindset because it's like the right timing can never come if you're always waiting for the right time, right? So it's just put one foot in front of the other, go somewhere with two people or one person and go from there.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I would agree with you, man. I when I did
Yeah,
my trips, I was like, they help build your character, and at the very least, you're gonna check out a different place. You're gonna learn more about yourself.
yeah,
Huge, man, huge.
yeah.
So I'm gonna do a speed round afterwards, but before we get into the speed round, and that's just gonna be a series of questions where you just answer quickly, and you know they're gonna be it's more just for fun, right? But
Okay,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
you're a big reader like myself.
Yeah.
So what would you say are your top three books and why?
Ooh, the first one would be The Alchemist.
Okay,
And
Paulo Coelho, huh?
yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
one, oh man, that one was a really good book because it really lets you see the perspective of someone that that's that's always viewing things with the cup half full, right? Like there's things that can always be worse.
Mhm.
And it tells you a story about like someone coming from nothing, having it all, and then going back down to nothing too. So it's like it takes you through this kind of like whole roller coaster,
Cool.
and I think it just opens your eyes to a lot of kind of misconceptions that we have about the world and like how we or self-limiting kind of beliefs that can kind of come into play. So I think
Okay.
it's a book that just opens your eyes, really, I would
Cool.
say.
Okay.
So that's one of them. And my other two, oh man, I'd have to give it to Malcolm Gladwell, the author. His book, David versus Goliath.
Yep.
Oh man, that was like, I mean, the title says it all, right? It's just
Mhm.
it's about the big man versus the small man, right? And he breaks it down into different struggles society is having with David and Goliath, with like, let's say the bigger school versus a smaller school, right? Like all these different parallels in different parts of our life. And so he makes it a story,
Okay.
and
Cool.
it's actual like stuff that's true in the world. It's not, he doesn't make it up. So I find he ties in like a storytelling with teaching about the world and seeing the world in a different way too,
Mhm.
and brings your awareness to those things. Like for example, one thing was like being the would you rather be a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? And so his comparison to that was with schools. So it's like you can go to Harvard, but you're going to be a small fish in a big pond. Or would you go to this smaller college where you can get the same education? You might not have the title of Harvard, but you can excel and really find your way in the world and be good at what you're doing versus always just trying to be going to like this more prestigious schools, right? So it's like stuff like that. Like he just opens your eyes to that,
Challenge
and so
your
that was
perspective, right?
yeah, yeah. It just gives you more perspective. And his other book, The Outliers,
Oh, I'm reading that right now again.
you reading that one? Oh
Yeah.
man, so like that, and that's just it. Like his books, like going back to it, it just tells a story, and he ties in real life stuff that's happening around us at the time or it happened in the past. And so it really just allows you to kind of just widen kind of your perception of everything. So
Yeah. That book
yeah,
is I'm reading that right now. It's the second
yeah,
time I'm
you're in
reading
it.
it. And
What would you say about it?
every time I go back to like books, like there's only a handful of books that I'll reread.
Yeah,
That one's one, man. Like
yeah,
I'm in the very beginning where he's talking about the 10,000 hour rule to mastery and things like that.
yeah,
And like it's super true whenever I look at it from every perspective. It's like just keep on going. I definitely would recommend that book for sure, man. I haven't read the other ones. I'm gonna have to give them a shot. This
yeah.
is kind of like a bit of a selfish question because I'm asking you so I can get some ideas for books too because I'm a big nerd when it comes to that stuff.
No, that's good. That's good.
So man, if it's cool with you, we'll do a bit of kind of knock out some quick questions, kind of like a speed round. You don't have to spend too long on them if you don't want to. We'll
Okay,
just knock them out quick. So,
let's try it out.
what's your favorite podcast and why?
Ooh, favorite podcast. I would say Joe Rogan right now.
Okay.
I don't know, it changes. But right now it's him because he's been just interviewing different like just different people like from all walks of life.
Mhm.
And I think it's cool. He mixes like comedy into it as well. And you learn a few things as well. And yeah, I would say yeah, there's a lot to take from him.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite junk food meal or cheat meal?
Oh, junk food. I would say just a good burger and fries.
Yeah.
Like
Any place in particular?
particular.
Give me some ideas, man. I gotta I got one coming up.
Yeah, yeah. I would say triple O's. You can't go wrong with
Yeah,
triple
yeah, yeah.
O's. Yeah.
Okay.
Get the sweet
Um,
potato fries.
yeah, that's good stuff, man. What is the worst job you've ever had?
Ooh, worst job I've ever had. Um, Man, that's interesting because like I never really thought of any job I had as a terrible job. But the one I disliked the most was probably the grocery store one. So I was like a stock shelfer, like back in like high school, like the early days.
I did
My,
that too.
my my older brother was doing it, and so it was just the kind of easy thing to do in the summertime.
Mhm.
But man, that was boring. They'd play the same songs over and over, and
Yeah,
and I think
it's
I
the
think
same
that's what it
radio
was.
station, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's crazy,
It
man.
was
Yeah,
terrible, man.
I did it too, man. And
Prison.
I actually didn't mind it because I made some lifelong friends there that I keep in touch with.
Ah,
So at least there's some silver lining there. But I didn't
right.
like it that much either. So now the next one is if you couldn't be an RMT and right now as you are, what other career do you think you would pursue?
Ooh, it's interesting actually. Probably do firefighter, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, it's just service. I think because like with the RMT world, I think I'm still being at a service for a certain population. But firefighter, I think it's just like for me, it's the physicality of it. Like you'd have to stay. It's excuse to stay fit.
Yeah.
Like right, and like or like it's maybe not an excuse the best word, but it's a deeper why to why you need to keep up with your movement or keep yourself kind of as strong as you can, right?
Mm.
Just injury free. So it would be yeah, but and like just the service, I would say like yeah, it'd be fulfilling, right?
Cool.
It's like it almost becomes like a selfish thing if you really think about it too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
It
works
becomes
both ways, I think. Works both
it
ways.
works both ways, yeah, yeah.
Uh, who's your favorite comedian or comedy movie?
Ooh, favorite comedian has to be Dave Chappelle. Oh man, that guy's
Legend, man.
yeah. Like I mean, yeah, for so many, and I think he just doesn't he has no filter, and I think that's it. Like especially these days with people trying to cancel anybody they can, right? I think it's him sticking the big fuck you
Yeah,
to everyone and saying like you can't like it's just something you can't cancel, man.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I would say
I like
him.
it, man. I like it.
Yeah.
Your favorite superhero?
Oh, favorite superhero. That's an interesting one, actually. I guess I'll say Batman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
like because I like his like story, like how
On the movies, yeah.
yeah, like and I think when I was thinking back to it, it's like those are the movies that I really enjoyed watching. Like Spider-Man was good, Superman movies were good, but
There's too
the
many of them
Batman
now, man.
movie, sorry?
There's way too many of the Spider-Man movies, man.
Yeah, I know. I guess they're like diluting it now, right? They're
Yeah,
making it
it's too much.
worse,
And
maybe. Yeah,
I
it's going
guess the
backwards.
question is, who's the real Batman, the actor? Because for me, it's Christian Bale.
I would say so. I would say Christian
Yeah,
Bale too.
yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
other older generations probably say somebody else,
Of
but for me,
course.
it's Christian Bale. He played it the best, man.
I think so too. Yeah, yeah. He definitely, yeah, he like he yeah, I think he really put himself in the character. That's
Oh
what it
yeah,
was,
for
right?
sure, man. Okay. And what about a superpower? If you could have any superpower, which one would you take?
Ooh, superpower. That's an interesting one, actually. I'll say being able to fly. Because then
Yeah,
you can man, think about it. No traffic, anywhere you want to go. You can be anywhere.
but it's only gonna be local, bro.
Oh,
Because think about it, you're not flying super fast. Like there's
Right,
only a
right.
limit to how fast you could fly, right? You got to think about
Yeah.
your body, right?
Interesting.
Because you're not like Superman. Superman's got like the crazy. He can barely be damaged. He can fly and stuff, but like
Right, right.
now you're only able to fly. You don't have like the super crazy body where you can't take any damage, right? Like I don't know. I always thought about it. I just said
Yeah, that's interesting. I
teleportation,
never
bro.
thought of it.
If I could
What's that?
teleport.
I was literally thinking that one too,
Yeah.
teleporting. 'Cause then you can teleport anywhere. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like I would say like free like you can like I guess freezing time would be an interesting one too. If
Yeah,
you're
that's
able
pretty cool.
to slow down time,
Yeah, yeah.
because then you can enjoy whatever moment you want even more, right? But
Yeah, that's an option too.
yeah,
What about your worst food to eat or, the food that you don't like?
what I don't like. Hmm. I guess growing up, it used to be because my mom always made roti, right? Like we eat roti like 5 times a week. So
Yeah.
it'd be like one of her I forgot which one it was because like I make sure she never makes it anymore. But like it's like a certain type of sabji or I forgot the word.
There's always one, right? There's always
Yeah,
one that you don't
that's
like.
like give me anything but that, right? Like so it's I would say
Yeah,
that,
man.
but like I guess here now I'm not like really doing that. And
Mhm.
so it's like the one meal that I wouldn't want to be eating often is like yeah, I would say like having like rice all the time. Like I would say
Yeah.
right, I don't know. I guess you just get sick of it, like
Yeah, if you have it
after
too
a
much,
little
right?
while. Yeah, if you have too much of it, but that's more of like just a kind of volume issue more than anything, right? It's like
Okay. Okay.
keep it on the.
And then next one's your favorite sports team if you follow sports.
Ooh, I do follow sports, but I got away from being especially the NBA at least a little bit. But I would say NFL, it's the Seattle Seahawks,
Yeah?
of
Okay.
course, right? Like we're just neighbors with them, right? But I've been a fan of that team since like the what was it, '07, '08 time. So
Mhm.
that was when my one of my cousins grabbed me a jersey from him. So I've been a fan ever since.
Cool, cool.
But they could be
What
doing
is
better, but yeah.
the next one's gonna be what is your biggest fear or phobia?
Ooh, biggest fear. I guess heights have always been a big one. But I've been like the thing is like I can get high up though. Like and it's not like a plane one, so I can get on the planes.
Mhm.
But it's like yeah, when you're climbing something and like you look down, like I feel
Yeah,
like that's
yeah,
but
yeah.
then the thing is like I've done what's it called? Like bungee jumping. Like I've done that stuff. So it's like I don't know, it's an interesting one. I guess it's
Yeah,
like when you know you're not secure,
yeah.
it's that feeling. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
that
being like
one's
a
that
building
one's
ledge.
justifiable. You could say that because even for me, I'll be at the highest point. I'm like, whoa, like you kind
Yeah.
of look. It's when you look down for sure.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
realize.
Totally.
What would you say is like your greatest role model? And if you don't have like your greatest role model, maybe your most favorite motivational figure.
I have like watched David Goggins and stuff like that, but those guys are pretty intense.
Yeah,
Um,
he's on all the time, man. Have you watched his
yeah,
Instagram? He's on all the time. Stay
yeah.
hard,
Like
stay hard.
he's never off. Yeah, I would say a guy like motivational. I would say like The Rock. Like he's someone that's not he doesn't because he doesn't come across like that. But I think it's just you consistently see him still working. Like I think well, everyone that knows him knows his story, right? Where he came from, him even being in Vancouver, with the
Playing for
CFL and
CFL.
stuff, and not being having much money, and so still seeing him work till this day. Like he's still kind of putting in all the hours, like even in the gym and stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
Like he's even after all this. So I think a guy like him, it's not some guy that I would think right off the bat, but I had to really think about like who's someone I consistently see.
Mm.
Because it's easy to name David Goggin or like some of these guys that are their title is motivator, basically,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like who's the other one? If you want as much as you want to breathe, what's
Oh,
his
Eric Thomas, I think.
Eric Thomas, yeah, like those guys, like that's their like almost job to be
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, and it's not to say that that's bad to have those guys, but like a guy like The Rock, where he doesn't even see himself as that figure, but just through his actions, he's just
That's also not even his main thing, right? Like So Goggins is super popular because of his hardcore mentality, right? That's what
Right.
got him super popular. Same with Thomas. Thomas was kind of like that motivational speaker. The Rock's, he's super wealthy from WWE, WWF,
Right. Right.
and then the movie business, and he's got
He
his
just knew
apparel
what
lines.
to
So he
do,
doesn't even
though.
have
Yeah.
to be that figure, right?
Yeah.
But it's just because it's in his DNA. He's
It's
doing
just
that
who he
stuff day in,
is.
day out. So
Yeah.
like that's why that generation, like that period of time, I like Stallone,
Uh,
Schwarzenegger, and The Rock when it comes to that stuff.
right.
They're
Right.
savages. Look at Stallone. Was he still not making a movie not too
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
ago?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Like it's
Crazy,
just
man. That guy's like
yeah.
70 or something, man. Like
Yeah.
it's just
That's
nuts.
it's stuff like that. It's kind of like how like Warren Buffett is too, right?
Yeah, he's still
Like
going.
and like his story, he still I think he still lives in the same house, and he still drives the same car. Like there's like like it's those like factors that really it makes I guess it clicks in for you, right? Like it's like for these guys, it's literally about the journey or like that grind, like for them, right? Like that's what they fall in love with.
Hmm.
They don't because if it was the destination for these guys, they would have stopped years ago
Mm.
after they got whatever they wanted, right? Or whatever fulfillment, like it was at the end of the where it was at the end of the rainbow for them. But for them, it's a journey, right? And I think that's the takeaway message is you gotta fall in love with like the process of things and not just what things are gonna get you at the end.
Fair
I think
enough. Yeah.
that's where consistency comes into play then.
Hmm. What would you say is the scariest moment in your life?
Scariest moment in my life. Um, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I guess knowing my grandma was in the hospital because we were in Kelowna and she was in the hospital in Oliver, and we already know, right? They're getting older.
Yep.
You gotta have to come to terms with it, but we never really kind of I
Fully
mean, at that
accept it.
age, you're not really thinking about those things, right? You're like, oh, I'll deal with it as things come, but then you're always never prepared for it. So
Mhm.
I would say like that was like the scariest moment in my life was then knowing my grandma's in the hospital and I can't get to her right away. So it's like, yeah, it was a very difficult time. And because I would say my grandma raised me. Like my mom, like anybody like first generation immigrants, it's they,
They're
they have to
working.
work, right? So they don't have time to spend with you. So the grandparents were the ones really who spent the day in, day out with you. So yeah, so that was I'd say the scariest moment in my life.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you're talking about your mom, I'll tell you, like, as soon as I became a parent and had kids, you start to understand your parents even more because then you
Uh,
start to become like a provider for this new life and you prioritize things differently, right?
right,
Like, if I would obviously want to spend more time with my kids, but if I know that I can financially make something that'll benefit them and be able to provide for them, it changes everything. So, one day when you become a parent, man, you're gonna understand your parents even more.
right, right.
Um,
No, that's
what
fair.
uh what scale would you want to be better at?
Ooh, what skill would I want to be better at? I guess communication. That's one that I would say I've been working on, but I want and I am constantly working on it. But I would say that's one that I want to be better at. And I think with traveling, it really made a big difference for me
Mhm.
because the only way to get what you want is communicating, right? And it's easy to communicate with people that you're comfortable with, right? It's so easy. You might not even communicate that much with them because there's level of like understanding already, right? So with complete strangers, you really gotta communicate everything. So I think that was one skill that I really kind of sharpened there as well too was
Okay.
communication.
Man, that's all I got for you today.
Yeah, no
Uh,
worries.
Thank you very much for taking the time to sit down, provide some value for the audience, and having a chat with me.
Okay,
How can
cool.
people reach you, and how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best way these days is the Instagram, I guess. So my Instagram handle is just my name, Lucki Mundi,
Okay.
LuckiMundi.
Okay. Cool.
And
And then what about if somebody needs some help with massage therapy?
yeah,
Where can they reach out and maybe try to book a session with you?
yeah. So my clinic's out in Delta, so it's called Therapex Health Center. It's just on the crossroads. Scott Road and 88 or Nordell there. So
Mhm.
um, across from Crown Palace, and so it's in the Toulouse complex there. So
Cool, cool.
you can find us on Google and yeah.
Yeah, I'll put the contact information in the notes, so then I'll have your Instagram on there as well, and I'll also have the name of Therapex and stuff and their phone number. So if people want to reach out, book a session, or just get a hold of you, they can get it that way. Man, thanks again. I really appreciate
Thanks.
you sitting down and sharing the time with me.
No, thanks for
Um,
having me, man. This has been a cool experience.
yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks again.